Welcome to the podcast for online fitness coaches. We're Benji Tucker and Ethan Gonzalez, and together we scaled each of our fitness businesses from 0 to 80K in just 4 months. On this podcast, you'll hear how to get more online fitness clients, make more profit from each of them, how to keep them longer, and the many failures and lessons we've learned on our path to a combined 160K per month. All right, so Ethan, we got a special episode. It's episode number 1, and we're going to be sharing our story and the biggest things we have learned to go from 0 to 80K each per month. So for you, when you just hear that question, hey, what are some of the biggest things you learned scaling to such a large extent in such a short period of time? Like, what pops into mind first?
I think the biggest thing for me was, it's a little bit different than your story, but I started right away by getting help. I knew that I didn't know what to do in terms of, how to run ads, how to even get clients, how to structure a program. Like, I had so many different areas that I was just completely unsure. So the first thing that I started with was actually investing into mentors to get the right guidance right away. Like, I
Yeah.
pretty much did it within the first month. And like a little bit of background of where I was working at a gym in person for 2 years. Um, Day by day, just working in the gym. I had my own personal coach who was a bodybuilder, and I was kind of into bodybuilding myself. So I had him as a coach, and I saw he was doing online coaching for a couple of years, and that really started to inspire me to want to do it myself. And so it was one of those situations where I started while I was still working at the gym, and they found out I was online coaching, and they just fired me right away. And it was
Yeah.
like I got fired. I think it was like August, 30th or something, and July like 14th or something like that, July 7th, I set up my LLC and was like, all right, I got to go all in. And I invested in that first mentor for 5K, like
Yeah.
right then. So it was a very quick transition for me to go from like, all right, I'm going all in on myself. I'm investing in myself and I got to make this work because
So
I
it's
literally just
July
lost my
into
job.
August, basically, right? Is what you're saying.
Yeah,
And how long ago? What year was that?
that was 2023.
Yeah, so you basically had a year of mentors, good and bad, which we'll get into, basically making nothing before, jumping to that 80K in 4 months, right? Is that kind of how it
Yeah.
went? So how many mentors did you invest in? How much money did you spend on them? And why did you decide to like invest in mentors when you saw so many other people being afraid to or saying, oh, they're all scammers or continually having some bad experiences yourself? Like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I invested in the first mentor. I think things went pretty well overall. I got some of the basics down, and I was like, all right, so that's the first mentor, 5K. Then I spent like another 3K to learn how to run ads in general, learn a better idea of how to run kind of the Instagram ads that we kind of teach a little bit.
Yeah.
So I spent 3K with him. Then it was, I believe, right after I joined one of the bigger coaching programs that you probably know out there. I don't know if
No,
you want
say
to
the
name
name.
drop him?
Yeah, just
Say,
say
all
because
right, all
we're just
right,
being
I'll name drop
honest.
him.
We're just
Yeah,
being
yeah. I mean,
honest.
we're just being honest, but yeah, I joined like Tanner Chittister's program, Elite CEOs. One of the more reputable ones supposedly out there. They had thousands of clients, and I joined their program. It's $4,000 a month for their coaching. And I'm like, all right, great. This is going to be like exactly what I need, right? Like I spent, a couple $1,000s, but this one was going to be $24,000 over 6 months that I was supposed to spend. And I got into the program, literally was the worst one I've ever done. Like no help for $4,000 a month. I learned nothing at all. After 8 weeks, I had to be like, hey, I'm done. Like I'm not going to continue paying this. Got out of that mentorship. That was again, I spent basically 8K and I kept it all, no refund, no nothing. And then after that, I started working with Jason Wojo. It's like, all right, next person, got to figure out ads. How can I scale my business? Spent 4K with him. Another terrible
Yeah,
experience.
we had
Like
very
again,
different experiences with him. Yeah.
but it
You
was
actually
like,
told me not to work with him originally, remember? Because you thought I
yeah,
was going to be working with like some random dude like you did, right?
yeah. I joined his program. He's like, oh, 87% of, our team is US based. And I joined it and it was all overseas people and they had no clue how to run fitness ads.
Some
I was
Indian
like,
guy being like, this is how you run your ads. And it's like, you don't
yeah, I
even,
was
yeah.
like, that doesn't work. So did that, spent 4K there. And then I think the next one was, all right, so I've tried a bunch of different ad stuff. I had gotten to consistent like 10 to 15K per month, but I'm spending 2K, 4K a month on programs at the time. So I'm like not making a ton of profit at this point. I really just didn't have anything to show for it. Next one I did was like InstaCoach Mike. I was like, all right, let's go
That's
organic.
crazy, that one.
Like let's change from ads. Let's go all in on organic. I sold this pipe dream. They sold non-compliantly with the FTC. I learned later on. Basically promising on the call that they're going to get me to 50K a month. That was 9,000. I paid that one. Saw zero results again. Like they didn't do anything at all. And so I just kept investing in myself. I was like, all right, let's take all the money I'm making, throw it in this.
So why'd you do that? Because here's the thing, right? I'm gonna play devil's advocate, or I'm gonna also play the role that everyone else does in their head, where it's like, I'm not gonna invest in a mentor because I heard how many people got screwed over by one. I'm not gonna invest in a mentor because I already got screwed over by one, and I'm not gonna invest in a mentor because I could figure it out on my own. There's lots of information out there, right? So in spite of all those thoughts that most people might have, why is that bullshit? Why doesn't that get anyone anywhere, those thoughts? And why did you keep investing?
I think for me, it was I just had no ego around it. A lot of people around me were like, oh, you're doing well. You're making like 10, 15K per month. Like you're doing good. But I just kept saying to myself, like, that's not really where I want to be. I want to be making 50K plus per month. And I don't have the knowledge or the skills to do it on my own. Like I'm not going to be an idiot and sit there and be like, oh, I know exactly what to do when I didn't know what to do. And so it made more sense for me to fail forward and get the right help than to just continue to stay in the same spot. I was never comfortable just sitting there and being like, all right, this is the way life is going to be.
Yeah, you're never comfortable being comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest thing. And yeah, you made a good point, because it's like you were talking about not having an ego, and sort of a mantra of mine has always been like, the reason I'm not making $1 million per month, even though that's not my goal, the reason I'm not making $1 million a month is because I don't know how to make $1 million a month, and there's other people that do, right? As if I'm talking to someone who says, hey, I'm going to help you get to 15K, well, that's what everyone's saying, right? Like, I don't care. I was already at that point, just like you were, right? We were hovering in between that 10 and 15. But if someone says, oh, they're doing 100K a month already, they're doing $1 million a month already, those are the people I want to learn from, right? So just like you, I put my ego aside and said, okay, well, if these people are making that much, they're the only people that know how to make that much, not the people who are making less than that, right? The fucking people that go to school and university and they take business lessons from someone who is a professor at a school making $50,000 a year. Like, that's insanity to me, right? So I feel like you just had the perfect mindset about that, because 99% of people would have quit after getting screwed over just once.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of the people that I worked with, it was not perfect. There was never, I've had definitely a lot better mentorships now, but there was a lot of times where it just felt like, all right, this is the same regurgitated information I've already learned. Like, this isn't actually getting the ball forward, right? I'm not actually making progress by doing this. But I knew that every single time I invested myself, even the times where it failed, I learned something else. I was like, all right, I know what I actually need and what I don't need, and what would actually help other people, right? So that's kind of where we're at now, where it's like we've taken the accumulation of all the money that I've spent, all the money you've spent, and we know what information is actually relevant today.
Exactly.
'Cause that's also another mistake that I found. Like, other mentorships are providing information that's years outdated, or like stuff that used to work forever ago.
Or they're not doing fitness coaching anymore, and they're giving information on what they did 5 years ago in fitness coaching, right? Whereas like we're still running coaching businesses. It's a big difference, right? It doesn't mean they can't get you results if they're not currently doing it. Doesn't mean that, right? But like you said, a lot of them, it's very outdated.
Yeah. Just to say it myself, like when I was a part of Tanner's program, like they were trying to do, cold outbound or just even messages in general, and they're expecting that you're going to get a 30% response rate from a cold DM. It's like, that's
from
never
a cold
gonna
DM?
happen.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they were like, when you send out 100 messages, you're going to get 30 responses, and you're going to book 6 calls from.
I've never heard anyone say that.
There's just no way to make that happen.
Yeah,
like
you're lucky to get a 10%. I mean, 10% would be the minimum threshold for relatively warm, like with follower ads, right?
So it's like they're expecting like 20 to 30% response rate, and then 5 to 6 of those people booking a call. I'd be like, dude, I'd book 20 calls a day. No, that's just not possible.
That's absolutely, yeah. You'd be a multimillionaire. Like every month, you'd be making millions. Yeah.
Like if it was that, they'd literally. I mean, that makes no sense.
Yeah. So there's no logic behind that.
That was like 2018 when Tanner was actually running his fitness business. So
yeah. So this is only 6 years later.
Yeah, it's 6 years. It's like, of course it's not going to work today. Like six
Yeah.
years ago, if you got a DM from a fitness coach, it'd be like, oh, like this guy's here to help me, you
Yeah.
know? But now it's like they've gotten thousands of DMs. It's no
Like every
longer
day they are getting DM'd by a
every
fitness
day.
coach. Yeah, and that'd probably be a good topic for another video. It's just like how to stand
Yeah.
out across everyone. Yeah, I'll give a little bit about my story without going over the same points that you did, just to kind of give my background. So it was December of 2023. I had been working at an in-person trainer job at Crunch for about 6 months. I had done some jobs before that. And for already like a year and a half, I was trying to build my online fitness business, but it wasn't really quite going anywhere. And I wasn't putting the full effort in. I had already invested in, and I'll just say who it was, into NCI, Jason Phillips. And they have great nutrition stuff and whatnot, but their information was very outdated. They were teaching going into Facebook groups and
Mm.
messaging people and then bringing them into your group. And some of the principles I learned, like that was great. I hadn't learned any of those principles before, but the bottom line is that it was not revenue driven. It was not KPI driven. And it was not, hey, here's the best way to guarantee results. It was, hey, here's the best way to do it if you don't feel like spending any money on ads and you feel like being a bitch, right? Like that honestly was the case. So we got zero results from that. I was so frustrated. And I figured, okay, well, in my mind, I thought, oh, I know the principles, so it must just take time to use this strategy or learn more and read a bunch of these books you see behind me, which didn't make any sense until I actually started making money. So it was a bunch of mental masturbation, and I started to become so frustrated. So I eventually quit at the very end of that December, and I said, man, I got to go all in. If I'm going to make this work, I got to go all in, which was true. I had to. You know, I read Hormozi's books and I said, I got to be product obsessive. And then once I built the product out, it was a great product. I tried to take it to the market and post organically. And I listened to all the organic people. Oh, it's unreasonable to not blow up if you post every single day. I posted every
Yeah.
day for 2 months. I didn't get like a single result. I was so freaking depressed. I remember like crying to my girlfriend about how I'm like not going to be able to live out my dream. And I said, something needs to change. It's like there's other people doing it that are like 16 years old. So it means I suck. I'm the problem. It's not that I'm doing everything right in the world, it's the problem. No, like I have to look in the mirror and say it's me, right? So what am I going to do about this? Well, I had to go out and find people who are actually doing it because they know better than me, right? So this is
Yeah.
just last summer ago. And I invested in 3K into someone's program who it like had principles of what I was trying to do, but it was
Yeah.
really shiny object syndrome. It wasn't even related to exactly what I was doing. And within 2 days of trying it was growth operating. Within 2 days of trying, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I want to figure out how the fuck I'm going to make money with my fitness offer. Then we found another mentor. That's where Ethan and I met actually in
Yeah.
this particular mentorship. Went through them. In retrospect, the mentorship wasn't good at all, but
Yeah.
it was good enough for me to be like, oh, all I have to do is click this button to run the ad with shit I already knew and I make money. Cool. Right. So essentially, I spent a lot of money, like 6.57K, for someone's video to show me how to run ads that was also free in their free school group.
Yeah.
Right.
Same video.
But that money held me accountable. And I said, look, if I don't spend this money and I don't push my back up against the wall, I went into debt for this, by the way, then I'm not going to do anything about this. And I'm just going to repeat the same cycle I did a year and a half later, which there's no logic behind that. That would be the definition of insanity, right? We get on calls with guys all the time where they're like, I don't like, first of all, they tell us their backstory and they're like, yeah, I've been doing some research. I've been trying to post for the last 6 months. Okay, cool. Did you get any clients? No. Okay. You run through the investment. Ethan in his, God tier sales. We know he doesn't suck at sales, so that's not the issue there. And they say, oh, it's a little too much money. Like, I have it saved up, but that's a big risk, right? We go through all the reframes with them and they're still afraid. It's like, okay, what's scarier, right? Not investing, which you haven't done the last 6 months, and that's what's gotten you nowhere, right? So it's going to continue to get you nowhere, or investing in pursuit of doing something different, right? So, since you and I had met, I've invested in lots of mentors. You have.
Mhm.
Why? Because we've learned the lessons that if we're just stagnant and do the same as that we always have, then we're not going to get better and there's no room for growth and we're going to be stuck at the same revenue forever.
And I think another thing on top of that is that you have to be congruent in everything you do. And so whenever I get on a call, I'm getting on that call to buy it. I'm not getting on the call to think about it. I'm not getting the call to, talk it over with a partner. Why? Because if you're getting fitness objections and you're giving the same objections, then you believe the objections.
Yeah.
And so you're not gonna be able to overcome them because you fully believe that giving objections is an okay thing to do. So when I have fitness clients give me objections, it's like, oh, the money, oh, this. I really honestly don't get many objections. It's pretty much only logistical money. But in the past when I was getting objections, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so oh, I got to talk to my partner about it. Okay, well, if this was an investment you're willing to make, why didn't you talk about it earlier? Right? Because that's what I would have done. Right? Or I don't even ask. I just do it because it's me. I'm responsible for the shit that I do.
Yeah, it's not
I'm
your
responsible.
wife. It's not
It's
your dog. It's not your boss. It's not your business
yeah,
partner. It's you. That's it.
yeah. It's me. It's it. So it's when it's like, hey, the program price is $4,000 a month. I was on the call and I'm like, all right, let's make it work then. Let's do it. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't say, I gotta check the bills, I gotta check the budget. No, I had the money, I made the decision, I did it. It sucked, and I learned from it. But it's all about investing in yourself because if you can't invest into yourself, how do you ever expect anyone to invest into you? If you
Yeah.
can't
You stole
spend
my fucking
3K
quote, by the way.
if you can't spend 3, 4K, 5K, 6K, how do you expect someone to buy your program, right?
Absolutely.
Like I just had a client sign on for 7K for a year. Just here's the invoice, pay it. She paid it, done. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not, you have to be congruent with yourself because if I'm not willing to pay 7K, then my belief around money is scarcity. And so I'm going to express that to your clients and the people on the call. You're going to think your prices are high. You're going to think that you're undervalued. And so when you say your price, you aren't confident. When you say your price, you don't have any conviction.
Yeah, if you don't have
And so
conviction, then you're not going to go the extra mile to make sure you close the deal. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, even when with managing sales teams, a lot of the best sales managers in the world will say that the key to a good sales team is the sales team actually believing in the product they're selling. It's like there's all the specifics of like, do they actually have a good sales process? Are they framed the right way when they come into things? Are they good at objection handling? Right? But there's also a certain amount of willpower and patience that as a closer you will have if you have an extreme conviction in the product that you're selling. And that could be the
yeah,
difference between closing at 35% and closer to 50%. Just that conviction, right? Because then you'll
100%.
go the extra hour to not let this guy off the fucking call because you know that he needs this product because you know how much you'll benefit from it versus honestly, like, I feel like kind of a scammer. I think this guy really isn't going to get that much value out of it. So I'm just going to hang up the call. This guy is clearly, not giving me an easy time here. Right? Those are
Yeah.
two very different philosophies.
And
So
with that too, with the sales piece as well, it's also the way you show up to the call because if you're coming into the call, right, and you're coming with scarcity and you're
yeah,
worried about it and you're like, oh, I need a sale right now. I need to make ends meet. You're just not going to show up with the right frame. Like when I show up to calls now, it's like, hey, you buy it, you don't buy it, doesn't
yeah,
change my mood at all. I'm just there to serve the prospect in the best way. So if they need extra support, if I need to handle something, I'll go ahead, push that extra mile. But if I truly believe that it's not in the best interest, I won't push it and I'll just let it go.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And, I think we added a lot, like we talked a lot about the mentorships. And now
Yeah.
maybe we could talk a little bit about while we scaled to that 80K, what were some of the turning points with your mentors where it was like, okay, this bit of information they gave me here had like the most dramatic difference? Like for you, like what would you say that was?
I would say the biggest difference for me when it came down to the mentors is like fully niching down on one avatar. I say that's one of the biggest things because with some of my other mentors, like the first mentor I ever had, he was just like, "Oh, go broad. Work with
That's
everyone.
crazy.
Work with men, work with women, work with every age." And I was just like, "All right, cool. That's what he said to do because that's what he was doing."
Yeah.
But it worked for him because he had 100,000 followers on Instagram and, he didn't run any ads and he ran only organic content. So he could technically work with everyone because everyone was seeing his posts. But for me, I ran with that for way too long and I kept working with, people who couldn't afford the service, people who weren't the right fit for the service, people who overall didn't have a high intent. They were not really following through on things.
Hmm.
And so it felt like, honestly, they were just draining my energy because you had clients who wouldn't check in, who wouldn't show up, who wouldn't do the work, who wouldn't see results. And then that destroys your back end of your business. You're not getting any retention. You're not getting anybody to re sign. You're not getting any referrals. You're not getting any testimonials. So it's like your business at that point, when you work with the wrong avatar, you're working month to month based on how many clients you
Yeah.
sign up and how many people leave.
Absolutely. And I think like you make a good point with niching down just in general because there's so many programs people say different things, right? Go broad, niche down. And you know, another important consideration is how do you niche down? Who do you niche
Mm,
to? But just first a little bit about the rationale as to why most people should niche down. Ethan had a good point, right? If you don't have a million followers and you're not literally not capable to speak to everyone, then that's number one. Two, generally, if you try to speak to everyone, you resonate with no one, right? Because now in a saturated industry where there are literally like hundreds of thousands of coaches out there and people trying to be coaches, it's there's 12-year-olds out there trying to do this, right? So how do you combat that? It's not by saying, hey, here's the 3 easiest ways to lose fat, right? That's
mhm.
not going to get you anywhere anymore because people are seeing those posts everywhere. And there's only the very few people at the top of the chain that's going to work for, right? Like the Trizzleman's fitness guy, for example, whatever that guy's name is. Good
Yeah.
content. Whereas if you say, hey, if you're a corporate, executive man and you sit your ass at a desk all day, here's the 3 easiest ways to, optimize your hormones. It's like, well, that speaks to a very specific person, right? So
Yeah.
it's like the crowded room theory. If you're in a crowded room and there's lots of, feints of whispers and you hear buzz, 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 right? You hear a bunch of people talking and you're not making out any words. And all of a sudden you hear from across the room, Ethan Gonzalez, very clear, right?
Yeah.
That you heard that because your brain subconsciously filtered out everything but that. That guy was speaking specifically about you and something that caught your brain's pathway, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing in the market with what we're doing here in this industry.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that was huge, and we were learning this through our mentorships, and then you actually audited it with my funnel. I
Mhm.
was running an offer that was supposed to be sort of for like desk workers, but I was a little bit broader about it. And I wasn't specific enough about what type of desk worker I was speaking to, right? So I was
Mhm.
just targeting like male desk workers. And that's fine. That's a good offer, right? But the problem was I wasn't dressing like them. I wasn't speaking directly to them. I was giving broad information and just saying it was for desk workers. And also lots of people are desk workers, right? Like people
Yeah.
who make 40,000 a year and people who make 200,000 a year. So I had to start resonating with the lifestyle of someone who made like let's say 200,000 a year, someone who's a little bit higher up in their white collar job, right? So instead of attracting just a 9 to 5 worker that sits at the same desk everyone else does, we need to find the people that lead the boardroom meetings, people who are
Mhm.
lawyers, people who are in tech, right? These different types of people. And as soon as I realized that's actually who my target demographic is, and that's what my content, who it needs to be curated towards, all of a sudden, right, the ad started optimizing for those people because those are the
Yep.
people who, when they clicked on the ad and came to my profile, they actually followed. And I started to
Yeah.
repel the people who are making less money because I made it very clear this is not for you. And that's okay.
And on top of that, it's not just like when it comes down to niching down, it's not just about like, oh, pick the person who has the highest
It's not.
income because if you pick them and you don't actually know how to help them, then you're doing a disservice to them. So
And then you're
it's
making no
about,
money.
yeah, and then you're making no money either way. So it's about like for both Benji and I and everyone we kind of consult with, it's about finding who can you actually help best, target that group. So if you are somebody who's like, hey, I'm just a generic person I help with nutrition and exercise, okay, like then you're not going to focus on hormones for menopausal women like I do, right? Because if you do, you're not going to be an expert and they're not going to see you as an expert. And then you're not going to gain traction with them and continue to help people. So for me, it was very specific who I niched down to, very much so like my mom, like corporate executive woman, travels a lot, high stress, honestly, different hormonal imbalances, gut health imbalances. And so I took the knowledge that I accumulated from other mentors learning about the science to then target that demographic. And because that demographic is not really anyone's targeting it, I'm really in a market of one. Like I'm the only solution for a lot of these people. So when they come to me, I talk to them, I got on a call, I'm the answer. And it makes it so much easier for us to move throughout the process
Yeah, you're
because I
not
can
competing
actually
with
help them.
anyone. You're
I'm
not
not competing
competing.
with anyone.
Yeah. It's one of one, right? And that's the sort of point of the Blue Ocean Strategy book, right? Is that there's a big red ocean, and that's the fitness industry, and that's every coach out there posting the same fucking thing, right? And then you make your blue ocean, which means there's no blood, there's no animals eating each other and fighting for, space in the ocean, because you have added things to your offer and taken things away from the offer that no one else has.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, right, all of a sudden you remove yourself from a very competitive market and you essentially make your own market. And that's what you and I have done, right? Even more so you, I would say, because less people are doing the corporate executive woman than they are with men. So I think that's great. And, I would say another thing that I wanted to sort of go over, right, is the fear of spending money on ads. So that's probably lesson number 3, just in terms of our scaling process, is that resistance to spending more money, especially when things were working and we already had the skill set to be able to make it work at a higher spend, right? So this is something that's very normal that happens with lots of our clients. I'd say 95% of them start with this resistance, and we have to sort of knock it out of them a little bit. Let's say you're at, first of all, it's starting to spend money on ads at all. So maybe we could tackle that, right? Because a lot of people, their relationship with money stems from their childhood and what their parents' relationships with money was. And, it starts off where you ask your parents for an action figure and it's like $8 and you're in the Target and you're 6 years old and they're like, no, that's too much money, right? Like, we got to save money right now. Okay. So what is that teaching you? $6, a lot of money, right? Like, we should budget on that. Okay. So you're also not taught with money being something that is a currency to obtain more money, right?
Yeah.
You're only taught it as a currency to attain something in exchange for it, right? So we've never been taught the principles in our past of, I put this money into this and I might not see it right now, I might not see it tomorrow, but it turns into a lot more, and that's what builds my wealth, right? We were never taught that before. So now we have to hack our brains and understand the logical math of the funnels that we're running and say, even though I don't see the money right now that's going to come from this, I have to burn this dollar in my mind, because it's not burning it. It's going to turn into $3, $4, $5 more dollars. And just getting over that in the first place is very difficult. So I don't know if you want to speak to your experience with that.
Yeah, I think with me, it was one of those things where I started immediately kind of with that first mentor, and it was mainly organic stuff. So I tried doing what he was doing. It didn't really work super well. And like 6 weeks into his program, I was already focused on the next one when I started like, all right, like I see a lot of Instagram ads. I think Instagram ads is the way to do it. I got to learn how to do this. And when I first started with them, I immediately started, and honestly, my ad account got disabled like right
Same.
away. Like my ads were disabled. Like I was trying to make like the health claims, the health policies on Facebook or whatever. So had issues with that. Probably spent, a couple $100. And again, this is right when I started. So I just spent 5K, I spent another 3K, and I'm spending money on ads. Like I'm probably 10K in right now, and I haven't really seen a lot of results. And so, I spent this money on ads. Maybe I got like some followers coming in, maybe things were going okay, but I hadn't made any sales. And it was like a little bit difficult in the beginning, right? Like I believed in myself enough, like, okay, I can make this work. I can spend the money on ads, but I wasn't super confident. And so eventually I got to the point where it's like, all right, 1.5, 2K a month to spend is normal. Like this is where I'm kind of at. And I did that for like an entire year. So I did it for an entire year or year and a half, honestly. And I was just so fearful of spending more on ads. And honestly, one of the biggest issues I had was I'd rather spend money on a program than on ads.
Yeah, I remember.
I didn't trust myself enough to be successful at that point. Because it's like, think about it logically, right? You're spending 2K and you make 15. And instead of spending, 6K on ads and making 42, you take that same 4K additional and you spend it on a program to teach you how to make more money. It's like
when you already have the foundational skills.
When I already had it. So it was getting over that fear of like, okay, I'm investing into myself versus needing more information on something that really, honestly, again, most of the programs I worked with weren't worth it. So it's like,
it's like if you know what 2 + 2 = 4, right? I almost said that wrong. It's like if you know 2 + 2 = 4, and then you're like, you know what though? I need more information on single digit addition. Like, let me get another math teacher for this. And then it's like, oh, they teach you like 4 + 4 = 8. Oh, I need another math teacher now. Like, that makes no sense, right? Another reframe I gave actually recently on our live call with our group is, imagine Steph Curry hits 10 free throws in a row, and then he's like, you know what? I'm gonna stop at 10 because I don't believe I can make another 20 in a row. It's like, what do you mean? You just went 100%. Why would you stop taking them? Right? If even if he missed 3 on his pursuit to 30, he's still 27 for 30. Right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us fall into sort of that fallacy. And you also have to consider, just when it comes to spending money on ads in the first place, or spending more money on ads when you're spending a little bit, it's a lot of people spend $200,000 to go into debt for a useless degree that doesn't teach you how to run a
Hmm.
business, and that teaches you how to make $50,000 a year. So what good is money for then if that's what it's doing, right? I'd
Yeah.
rather put 30K in the ads, lose 15K of that, go negative, and then learn, oh, that's how you run ads the right way, right? And then from that 30K in ad spend and negative 15K profit, have the skill set to be able to make 30 to 50K per month while running ads, right? And
Yeah.
then go from there on the next step of my journey. I much rather that. I rather lose money as quick as possible to learn the skills that I need as quick as possible to then start making money.
Yeah. And I think another thing on top of spending more on ads is like, for most of you guys, if you're spending, 1.52K a month, you're probably booking 10 calls, right? That's probably the average, right? 150, $200 a call in fitness. Maybe you can get it less, maybe you can get it more, but it's like you're probably getting 10 calls in a month. So out of those 10 calls, how many are showing up, right? So if you got half of them showing up, now you
Yeah,
have 5 calls. You're in the state of scarcity where it's like, shit, I have 5 calls to make 2 sales. If I only make 1 sale, I'm going to break even for the month.
essentially, yeah.
So you're much more in the sense of scarcity when you have less calls. Number one, you have less practice. You don't know how to handle objections as much because you don't have as much live examples of it. And you actually kind of become worse, right? When I started spending more on ads, I went from, 10, 12 calls booked in a month to 10 to 12 a week.
Yeah,
And so you infinitely learn faster. You learn
that's
what
right.
works, what doesn't work, how to do things right. And once you nail that process down, like that's when sales comes into play a little bit, is you can actually start to close much higher percentages than you were before.
Yeah, more at
And also,
bats is going to give you. Sorry, I cut you off. I was just going to say
yeah,
more at bats give you more skill, and that skill on those calls give you more leverage. Like the month where I went from having, 10 to 15 calls per month, and then, I was closing at a decent percentage. I wasn't horrible at sales, but then the next month we booked 120 plus calls.
yeah,
Well, that was a high volume funnel. Let's say that 75 of those showed up still. It's like, okay, well, I got really good. That was the month that I probably increased my sales skills the most without even consulting with another mentor, without even analyzing much of my calls, just by having a lot of at bats, having a lot of confidence now, a lot of
hmm,
conviction in what I was doing, and also a lot of conviction because now I have more at bats. I'm selling more people, and then I want to go do
yeah,
it again. Right. So let's give the worst case scenario with that as well. I spend more money and I have a lot of at bats. I'm not operating from a scarcity mindset, and I break even. Okay, I
yeah,
spent a shit ton of money to break even, where I could get upsells on the back end, and where I learned valuable lessons and I improved my sales skills. And I
yeah,
think that's lesson number 4, honestly, out of the 4 biggest ones that we'll go over here today, is not sucking at sales and being quite competent in sales, because that's going to make your funnel work really well when you're new to the market and you don't have a lot of pent up trust and authority in the market. So the front
yeah.
end of your funnel is really going to be more difficult to have optimal KPIs. I mean, the only way to really make that funnel work and have a really strong ROAS is improving your sales skills.
Yeah. And that's what I'll say is probably the most important things is that if you're you could have kind of every little front piece optimized, right? You could be getting a great cost per follow. You could be getting a great cost per, profile visit, and you could be having, maybe even a 30% response rate. Hell, call it 30%
Yeah.
response rate. Say you're booking 5, 6 calls a day, but if you're closing at like 10%, you're not going to make any money,
Yep.
right? So if an entire month, let's say you book 12 calls, out of those 12, your show up rate sucks. This was mine. I had a 30% show up rate back in the day. Like I would literally have almost nobody show up. So I literally had to close those calls or I made no money. So I'd have, 12 calls booked in a month. I'd have 3 or 4 people show up. And out of those 3 or 4, I would close 3. So even though I had everything terrible, I would still make deals.
Yeah.
And now that I have 4 times the calls coming in every single month, I close 4 times the deals.
Yeah.
And so it's that simple when it comes down to the sales ability. When I get on a call now, like I think it's last 2 weeks, I've closed at 68% on a $4,800 offer, all pay in full or with financing. So it's like you can easily get better at sales the more calls you take, and obviously the more you practice. And the only way to get more calls is by spending more.
Yeah,
There's
and
no
you have
way
to keep in mind too,
there's no way
like
to do it.
beginners, usually you're right to point out that their KPIs on the front end can be amazing, and if they can't close, then they're just burning money, right?
Yeah.
But in addition to that, I'd say that most beginners' front KPIs are actually subpar because they are beginners and they don't know how to do those things as good. So
Yeah.
when they do finally get a sales call and it's like all or nothing, like they need to
Yeah.
close this to break even and they don't, it's like, yeah, that's a big problem. So being competent in sales and having strong sales skills give you so much more leverage to be able to spend more money, even when other numbers in your funnels are not optimized. And I think that's
Yeah.
a huge point because when I first started, I didn't have a properly curated sales process. I had never done formalized sales training, but my dad and grandpa were in sales. I did sales jobs in person and I had a certain personality for it, right? So I'm not as polished as you are, and I never probably will be in my sales skills, quite frankly, because I don't care enough as well, and that's not my
Yeah.
role anymore. But the other thing is that my cost per follow was like $5 per follow
Mhm.
on my fitness offer, which is very high, right? Your cost per follow, my cost per follow, it's like $1.50 to $2.50
Yeah.
now, right? So it's less than half of that. Yet I still profited a 4 to 5x in my earlier months just because the at bats that I did have, I was able to close those deals. But if I wasn't, I probably would have said, "Oh, the ads don't work. Oh, the
Mhm.
funnel doesn't work. Let me go get another mentor. Let me quit this altogether and go back to fucking working at McDonald's or whatever it is that you guys were doing before online fitness coaching." And that's the reality, right? You get shiny object
Definitely.
syndrome and you go somewhere else. But realistically, if you just said, "Oh, it's not the funnel, it's not the ads, it's not the mentor, it's not the program, it's me, and I need
Mhm.
to make this funnel work and I need to make this program work by improving myself and improving my sales skills," then you're going to get somewhere, right? Then you're going to close deals, you're going to make money, and you're going to have more conviction in what you're doing is the right path.
And I think on top of that too, the thing that makes I'd say me, you, almost anyone who is successful is having a very, very high responsibility frame on everything they do. Like you have to always take responsibility for everything, whether it be like, oh, the ad isn't working. Okay, don't blame Facebook. You recorded the ad, you scripted it. Like it's not
Yeah.
Facebook's fault that it didn't work. There's something wrong with your ad that you can fix. Oh, I'm not booking any calls. The leads suck. Well, I'm sure even if the leads sucked, you could still book in broke people, right?
Yeah.
Broke people will still book a call.
That's why the leads suck. Why are you
That's
attracting shitty leads?
yeah.
Other
I
people
mean,
don't attract shitty leads, so there's something
yeah.
wrong with you. They don't like you, the good leads.
They don't like you, or you should still be getting calls and you
That's
taking
right.
calls.
Yeah.
And like if you're taking calls and they all are broke, okay, are they all broke? Or are you not building enough value in the conversation that they're willing to finance your program? Like these are things that people
That's
said
right.
to me like, "Oh, my leads can't afford it." And it's like, how could they not afford a firm or Klarna over 36 months? It's like, of course they can afford it. Are they willing to do that though?
Yeah, and part of that's your job. Part of that's the lead
It is your
quality, but
job.
a large part of that is your job in reframing their mind as to, why they should do that and providing the value necessary for them to, have that urgency to take that step in the
Yeah.
new direction,
Because
right?
it's down to the fact of like you have to, this is why I think that I'm very good at sales, is that I extend every option that's possible. Like
Yeah.
I don't give up on somebody unless it's literally nothing I can do. So if someone says, "Ethan, I have $20 in my bank account," we've already listed out every single expense that they currently make in the month. They're negative, they have 8K in credit card debt, and their credit score is a 400. All right,
Then you're
there's
out of
nothing I can
options.
do,
Unless they could
right?
get a loan from a friend.
Unless I can get a loan from a friend, right? And you can still push further, but it's one of those things where if you get to that point, okay, you've done your job. You've done everything you
That's
can
right.
do. But for a lot of people, they get the money objection and they're like, "Oh, I can't afford it." "Oh, okay, like, let's see if we can fix it." You can't handle it, and then they're gone. And
Yeah.
it's not even money, it's strictly just they're fearful, or they're uncertain if the value is even high enough for them to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing is like I used to complain about objections, about getting objections and stuff like that. And I had to take the responsibility and be like, people don't come onto my call to give me objections. They don't come onto the call saying, hey, I'm going to give Ethan a partner objection at the end of this call. No, it's my causing them to have that happen.
That's right.
It's me causing them to make it happen.
And if your leads are shit, like if they actually are, you're actually good at sales, then what are you doing about it complaining? Go fix your fucking ads, go fix your and optimize your Instagram profile and attract higher quality leads. Like what are you doing sitting around? You don't have enough time to waste saying, "Oh, your leads aren't good." Go do something about it.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Don't just sit there and complain and be like, this all sucks. Nothing's working. Okay, well, make it work.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You always have the option to make it work or try something different or do something else. And that's where a lot of people give up is they get that frustration and then they stop. And then it's like, okay, well, you gave up. Right.
Exactly.
It's just like in fitness, right? You can have clients be frustrated and be like, I'm not seeing any results. Okay. Are you following the plan 100%? Are you doing all your steps every day? Are you doing all the workouts? Are you eating 100% on plan? Oh, no, I'm not. Okay. Then of course you're not going to see results.
It's your fault. Yeah.
It's your fault. You're not doing it. So
I'm actually working on like a flow chart right now for our clients, and it's just going over like the main constraints, right? It's you have how you get clients all the way from, cost per click to, DM response rate all the way to your ROAS, right? And in between there is your close rate. And you go through and it's like, first, it's like, is your lead quality good or bad, right? Is it under a 7? And you have to be very honest about that, right?
Yeah.
Because the other question, it's like if the answer is no, it's not under a 7, meaning it's above. It's like the answer is you suck at sales, right? That's the answer, right? Whereas a lot of people aren't honest about the lead quality. And you say, oh, the leads aren't very good. The leads aren't good at all. And then when you actually look at their lead quality, it's like, wait, their lead quality is not that bad at all. It's like a 7 out of 10. Right? They actually just suck at sales and they're not being honest with themselves about it. So I worked that into the flow chart I'm working on right now so people can be honest with themselves and actually see the option right in front of their face that it's like, I suck at sales, right? I want to let them know that they suck if that's the point in the flow chart they're at, because so many people go months, if not years, maybe their entire careers on end saying, oh, it can't be my sales skills because I'm the greatest at this. It must be something else in the funnel. And then they can never identify the proper constraint. They try to tweak all these things. They don't need to tweak anything at all. They just need to get better at sales.
Yeah. And I'd say the biggest thing too, if you're going to tell yourself that you're amazing at something, you better be making money.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to say, if you have an ego, if you're like, oh, I'm so good at sales. Okay. What's your closing percentage? Oh, it's amazing. It's like 60%. Okay. How much did you make this month? I made like 10K. Okay. So you took like 2 calls.
Yeah.
Right? So you took 3 calls and you closed 2. Right?
Yeah, it's like you're a college basketball player and you're like, I'm so good at basketball. You're hyping yourself up. Oh, what team do you play for? Oh, it's just Division 3 team. You probably never heard of it. It's like, you're not that good then, dude. There's room for improvement.
There's always room for improvement, and there's no reason to have an ego in it, and always take responsibility. You can always get better.
Yeah.
Like, don't ever just tell yourself, oh, I can't improve or I can't change things. Like, until you're at the point where you literally can't do any better, right? There's certain limits to it, but I would say unless you're making like 50K plus a month, 100K a month, all right, fine. You don't want to scale your business further. You're perfect where you're at. Great. But until you get there, then you can always improve.
Absolutely.
And there's always going to be another goal.
100%. Do you want to read the close thing and then I'll edit it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool, guys. So that's the end of the episode here. Thank you for checking out the podcast for online fitness coaches. As a thank you, throughout this episode, I talked a little bit about my sales ability and the things that I've worked on. So I want to go ahead and give you the exact script that Benji and I use to close at 60+% each and every single month inside of our fitness businesses. So if you want it, just go ahead and message us on Instagram at PT Launchpad. Okay, so no spaces, PT Launchpad, and we'll go ahead and send it right over to you.
Take care, guys.
All right, I'll see you.
Sweet.